Danny, what's up, man? It's great to see you. It's been a long time since we talked.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean we're connected via Instagram and other places, but it seems like we're not able to ever get in touch with each other unless there's an event with Sorinex or something like that going on. We need to make it happen more often.
Yeah, can't complain about getting to go to some of those events. So I mean, they're so fun and just the people. It's really the people that you get to spend time with there that's special. So people like
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, no doubt, and I feel the same. So I wanted to have you on because I want to talk with you about something I've always been impressed by with you, and you actually sent me a text a little bit ago with a video that I think encapsulates perfectly what I wanted to talk with you about. You sent it for the guys who won't be able to see it. Maybe I'll figure out a way to post it up or something, or they can follow you on
Well, don't
Instagram.
don't post that yet. Like I've been holding off to
Okay, I won't.
to share that one, but just
You
because
don't want me to
there's
say
some
anything
crazy.
about it?
Yeah, we can talk about it because it's one of those things that it almost needs an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
If people see it in the shock and awe, I mean, me and you, whatever, we get it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it's one of those things
Well,
that if so,
I'll let
we
you
can go
I'll
into
let you explain the video then, and then we can go from there.
it. Well, just to give a quick heads up for people, what they're going to hear is I ended up stabbing a ram with a knife. And basically, the way it sounds very archaic, but that wasn't my intent to go hunting with a knife. My intent was to go bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, always the goal is to dispatch them as quickly and as painlessly as possible. It's just this opportunity came up, and that was the best option. I was bow hunting. I came up over a ridge. Here's this ram by himself, and I watched him for a while, and he ended up dipping into this little low spot. So if you're spot and stock hunting, when they you kind of watch them, and if they can see you, you know if you can see them, they can see you. So like this thing dipped
Right.
into this little low spot where he couldn't see me. So I quickly rushed up when he couldn't see me. I quickly took a look around and made sure there was no other rams that would spot me, and I rushed up to this little spot where he had dipped up over into this little hole, and I popped my head up over expecting to see him within 30 yards, and I had an arrow
Mm-hmm.
knocked. I was ready to go, and he wasn't there. So when I popped up, he was gone, and it's real open terrain. And so I was confused. I thought maybe somehow he dipped out of there without me seeing.
Sure.
Because they do that. They're just like ninjas sometimes, but it just seemed so odd that he wasn't there. And so I started creeping real slow. And when I got about 15 feet away from him, I didn't realize that he had bedded down
Mm.
in this little cut in the grass. So if you're trying to picture it, I'm standing on some grass, and then it extends out like 15 feet. And then there's this little dugout. It's like maybe a foot and a half lower than where I was standing. And he had his back rested right up against that dugout. So really all I saw was like a little bit of his back leg. I seen a little bit of wool from his back leg. And I was like, dang, there he is right there, and he had bedded down and went to sleep. Man, he must have been tired,
Yeah.
but there was no shot for me because where I was standing, I couldn't see any of his vitals, no nothing. I could just see his back leg. And I thought about it, and I could see the situation. I was like, I can't stand right above this thing and shoot straight down. It's going to be very awkward. So I was like, screw it. I'm gonna go up there. I thought about just grappling him and like wrestling him. I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't really, my thought process wasn't really fully engaged. I was just like in the moment. So when I dropped my backpack and my bow, I grabbed my knife. And I was like, okay. And as I was walking up to this thing, because I snuck up on it and took some time just to make every step silent.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, okay, I got this knife, and I've had to do this before with animals. And I'm like, where you have a knife and they're still alive and like resting,
Sure.
like, okay, you don't want to
Right.
stab yourself, right? So like, okay, I'm gonna hold it in a way that the blade is coming out the bottom part of my hand, away from my thumb, so at least it's facing away from me when I'm holding it. Kind of like, a horror movie, you'd see somebody
Right.
like stab
Sure.
something, kind of like that. So I was like holding it so it's away from me. And I get up to it, and the way it's laying, I'm thinking, okay, as soon as I put this where its vitals are, I'm right-handed and my head's kind of going to be next to his head, and he's got horns and he's used to headbutting stuff. So like that thing's going to jump up and headbutt me. So I'm thinking, okay, shoot, how am I going to do this? So just quick thinking, I just like, okay, I'm going to grab his horns and stab him at the same time. So I get up to him and just simultaneously grab his horn with my left hand, stick the knife in with my right hand, and just hang on. And it spun around and got a little awkward where it like twisted my wrist. And I thought about regripping it. And I was like, I knew I got that knife where it needed to go. Like I know where the lungs and heart and everything lay.
Sure.
And so I was like, man, this thing's done. Like, so it spun out of there. I thought about wrestling it for a second. I was like, well, don't be wrestling this thing with a knife in your hand. So I let him run out. And he literally ran 20 yards, just as if you would have shot him with a bow. 20 yards and fell over within 10
Mm.
seconds and died right there. So yeah, like the reason I am cautious who I share that with is just because obviously someone would see that as pretty barbaric and look at me as some kind of psycho of just like stabbing animals to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
I cleaned that thing and ate it, no different than if I killed it with a bow. Um, Everything was all the same to me. I mean, you're going out there with the intent of taking an animal's life to eat. To me, it really doesn't matter if it's with a gun, bow, or a knife. It is a little bit more. You're a little bit more connected to,
Sure.
because I mean you're feeling this thing wrestle away from you, but um, you know, the opportunity presented itself, and who knows, maybe I will need to do that for real one day. Um, the way the world's going, who knows, dude? I might be out there out
I
of arrows,
know.
out of ammo, and then I already have it as practice. But yeah, it just the opportunity presented itself. Maybe we'll share that video. We'll see. But yeah,
I
I thought
think,
you'd appreciate that.
oh, I did. Was it a Mouflon sheep? Is that what it was?
It's a hybrid.
Hybrid. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So
that's a mix between what, a black Hawaiian and a Mouflon. Is that what that is?
yeah, that'd be the easiest way to explain it. Like the black Hawaiian sheeps are just feral sheep.
Right.
So anything with wool on it, it's got the feral sheep in it. Like the
Right.
purebred mouflons is just hair, just like
Hair.
a deer would have, and they have a big beard.
Yeah. That's
They
what
have
this
no
is here.
wool.
This is a black Hawaiian right here.
Hmm.
This is one I killed on the Big Island 3 or 4 years ago. And then I was able
That's
to
so
shoot a
awesome.
goat. The goat's above him. I was able to shoot a goat. I had a goat I popped up over a ridge, and the herd saw me. And so I kind of
Yeah.
slowly ducked down, and they didn't bolt. They stayed. So I waited there and I crawled down the backside of a ridge, knowing which way they were going to walk. And they started to walk down, and I kind of peeked my head around the corner and saw the billy. And I was like, all right, here's my shot. But I had already ranged it, and it was 75 yards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, like it was getting towards the end of the day. I'm like, I know where he's going to go. Like 70, that's a long poke. I don't know. And he walked exactly where I thought he was. And I drew back. And right before I was about to release, one of the nannies walked in front of him. And I was like, oh, wait. So she went,
Yeah.
and then she moved. As soon as she moved, I shot and ended up hitting him, and he jumped up, and we had to shoot him again. He went and bedded down because I shot a little
Hmm.
back. I gut shot at him. But yeah, it's pretty cool to hunt out there in Hawaii. I mean, the fact that you're hunting, but then also you're in the middle of the sea on a volcano is actually pretty amazing to me. It's a cool phenomenon.
Yeah. It's a pretty special place. We just had the volcano. The regular volcano Kilauea is erupting again right now. It actually started yesterday, but Mauna Loa, when we had that erupt about a month ago, in my lifetime, I haven't seen it erupt. So I don't know. It just makes you it just gives you a different appreciation for where you live, just to wake up and look behind the house and see the whole sky glowing red at 2 in the morning.
Mm,
Um, and that's just to know that you're, 2, 3,000 miles from anywhere, any of the main lands, it's
right.
crazy. It's a special place. And yeah, to be able to hunt here, and it's, I mean, I love it.
That's part of the reason I wanted to have you on, because I think there's, we live in these concrete jungles, and so many men are detached from nature, detached from their wild side, detached from their primal roots. And you're somebody that I look at and see who is intimately familiar in a lot of different ways with who you are as a man, but like even who you are as a species, right? We're supposed to be connected with the wild and be integrated with nature. And I really respect that. It's hard for a lot of guys to imagine a life like that, considering where they come from.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to imagine anything else because that's just the way I grew up. And but as I got older too, I've definitely been more cautious of it or conscious of it. And because it's like when you're a kid, it's easy to be a wild animal, right? Like look
Yeah,
at you have
sure.
kids. They're wild animals. I mean,
Right.
I don't care if you grew up in a concrete jungle or where you grew up. Kids are just wild. But as we grow older, we lose some of that. So it's fun to tap back into it. And it's just, it feels so right, like people, right? Like I'm sure you talked about this before, like all the toxic masculinity and all this stuff. While I do agree that maybe there is some of that where people are trying to fake it almost, just thinking that
Mm.
that's what they need to be. But if you truly just let yourself be a wild, it doesn't have to be all the time. You don't always have to be crazy. My whole thing is like we're living in a modern world, right? Like I drive a car, I know how to drive a car. A lot of the work we do is done on the computer. Like I need to know how to use Photoshop, Illustrator for some of the stuff that I do. So there's a lot of the modern world that I can't just be this wild animal living out in the sticks because that's an uncomfortable place. I've been there, I've slept, last year I probably slept, I don't want to over exaggerate, but easy 60 days on the ground, in a tent or just laid a tarp out and slept. It's not the most pleasant place to be. So I don't want, I like living in a house, but there's a line there. And as far as the animal side, we got to let that out. If you don't let it out, you're doing yourself a disservice. And then, the whole side of like the mental health side of things, it's hard to take into account because that's not something you can just reach out and grab and like, here's your mental health, here's how to take care of it. Like, oh, I'm getting overweight, like that's your health. It's not something you can see. But I've found that if you tap into that animal side a little bit more often, it helps. It helps with me. Like I can only really speak for myself, but I've also tried to push other people into that, and I've seen it kind of light something up in theirs, and for that moment, for that day or the next day, that life is back in them.
Mm. Yeah, I feel the same way. When I started hunting, 6 years ago, roughly. I think it's been about 6 years ago. I didn't have a lot of that in my life up to that point, and yeah, it unlocked a side of me that wasn't present, wasn't available before. And yeah, I come back to my work and ordinary everyday life, and we get inundated with our mundane schedules. But I look forward to every hunt, whether it's on in Hawaii or Minnesota with a bunch of friends, or I'm taking my two oldest boys to Texas in a couple of months. And I look forward to those opportunities because they're just for a lot of us, they're just few and far between. And I'm curious how, when you say you want to push others into that, or at least introduce them to that, where would you suggest that somebody that maybe wants to unlock some of that would start?
uh if we're just talking in general, um honestly, now that I'm older and I can't just go out and do all the wild things that I want to do, the gym has been a great place for me to tap into that a little bit because it's something I can do here at home. Or if you got to go to a gym, but while you're working out, don't be afraid to let that wild side out. If you're going to lift if you're going to lift a weight, don't be afraid to just like, like let, maybe not scream if you're in a gym or something, but just let it, just have that feeling of, like I got to do this because my life depends on it. Um, and then just, there's probably a million different hobbies that we do as kids that we don't do anymore. And just, every once in a while it might be good just to go back and do do one of those things. Whether you used to go ride bikes or mountain bikes or skateboard or even just playing basketball or something. I don't know, just like play, anything that's considered play, I feel like is a good chance to do that. And then I'm gonna try do some trainings and stuff. I do some of the military stuff for the off-road stuff, but that's we tap into a little bit of that just because that's their mindset and that's my mindset. But I'd
Mhm.
love to do some private stuff as well, eventually down the line.
What would that entail? Like, what do you see that being?
I see I see people being able to come here to Hawaii because it's my backyard,
Mhm.
and I've done this with some friends and kind of like mocked it up already. But come here because you're totally out of place. You're away from your family. That away, you're away from distractions. It's the same way as when I go to the mainland. Sometimes it's nice to just be away because it allows your brain to escape. You're not thinking about work because you can't, grass work. You're out here in the middle of the ocean.
Mhm.
Um, we do some underwater training. That's an easy one to get people very uncomfortable. Holding your breath
Definitely.
underwater is probably the easiest way I find to add stress to people's life. So as soon as I can get you comfortable holding your breath underwater, we've overcome a step of a primal instinct to want to breathe. And with time and practice, yes, in that 1 week, we can work on getting your stress levels to come down, which is going to help your breath hold go up. When you
Mhm.
stress and you panic, your heart rate goes up, you're using more oxygen, and it's not intuitive to hold in your breath. So you have to fight everything that your body wants to do to actually be able to improve in that situation. Well, that also can extend out into life. It's the same way some of the religions, Buddha, whatever, they'll teach you your breathing techniques. And in stressful situations, it's shown that with science, the proper breathing techniques can calm you down. And we know how bad stress can be. As far as your health goes, I think a certain amount of stress is good, but for certain things, people stress. I know for a fact, 100%, I can say with certainty that people stress about way more things than they actually need to be stressing about in this day and age.
We had a
So,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought.
no,
I was
yeah.
gonna
So
rip
just,
on that.
yeah, just come over here, do some underwater training. If you're into spearfishing or basically gathering your own food would be spearfishing, and hunting. I would love for it to be bow hunting, but that's a little bit more involved, as far as getting someone set up with a bow if they've never done it before. But I've done literally crash course, get someone shooting a bow one day and have them hunting the next day. Everybody's different. I can't say that everybody's going to be like that. And, that may sound irresponsible, but I've seen people shoot amazing at 20 yards. And I feel confident that if I'm right there with them in their ear, kind of coaching them through when to shoot, staying calm, that it's doable. But stuff like that, come over for a couple of days, maybe 3-day course or a 5-day thing, and just get away from your normal life and come get stress inoculation involved, but then learn how to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. Let me know when you decide to do that. Cause I know we could get 5 to 10 guys. I don't know how many men or women that would entail, but
Yeah.
I know I could get 5 to 10 to 20 to 100 guys like that who would want to be
Yep.
involved with something like this. So let me know when you when you bring that
I
about.
will. Yeah, we'll keep in touch for sure.
I'll be one of those people.
It'll be
So
fun. It's fun, dude. It's just a
yeah,
blast, you know?
yeah. I'm glad you're talking about stress. I was on a call with our guys this morning for one of our weekly calls, and one of the questions that got brought up is how do you deal with future uncertainty? How do you deal with maybe some grief and sorrow or remorse for things that you've done in the past? And I think a lot of these things are beyond our control, and I think that's probably what makes it the hardest. If it's within our control, then we can do something about it. But if it's outside of our
Yeah.
control, then it's easier to stress about. And I think the level of stress for men in modern society is probably higher than it's ever been because we have no direction and we have
Yeah.
less and less ability to deal with the stress when we inevitably face it.
I would agree. If we just want to break it down real simple, when we were cavemen or living in teepees, our purpose, our job was to hunt and then to also protect our tribe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we knew what our purpose was every day. We knew when something came screaming in the middle of the night, we had to get up, and that was us that needed to be there. When we need to go get food, that was us that needed to go get it. It wasn't as easy as going to the grocery store or anything like that. Well, now um, there's a lot more involved. We can't just be that. We can't just be that person. We can't just go hunt every day and then come home and be treated like a hero because we kept our whole tribe alive. So I think there's a couple things there. It's like, one, our purpose of life is way more complicated than it's ever been. And the gratitude for the things that we do is no longer there, right?
Mm,
Like
yeah.
the gratitude from our communities is no longer there. Especially if we go to work, let's just say if you go to work and in modern day, you just sit at a computer all day. That's all good. You are providing for your family. But when you get home, there's no sense of like huge accomplishment, not only from your community, but also yourself. You're probably not feeling like, man, I really slayed it today. Whew, man, I tapped that keyboard and
those
like,
spreadsheets, man, I killed those things.
exactly, you know? So it's, I don't know if our brains will get rewired, because I do feel like given the right circumstances, we probably could maybe feel a little bit better about ourselves, about the things that we're doing. Because even if you go and you're actually, let's say you have a job that actually contributes to society, not to say tapping on a keyboard doesn't. Let's just use that for an example. I do feel like there has to be some satisfaction there that we're not giving ourselves. Um, because it starts with us, like we need to be our own biggest fans before we can expect our communities to really care, or our spouses or our children, whatever it is. So um yeah, to get back to it, I think the lack of purpose is no longer there, and it's very complicated. Our society is very, very complicated now, whereas I don't feel like it was as complicated before, but we did deal with a lot more struggles, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
nights that were cold, a lot more hunger. Even just like if you talk to anybody who's been on any of those shows like Naked and Afraid or anything,
Yeah.
ask them about the bugs, the bug situation. We don't deal with that anymore. We got nice soft clothes, and we sleep in sleeping bags.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty wild when you do some of these things and it really puts into perspective what you're worried about. I think that's part of the draw, maybe not the draw, but the benefit of doing these challenging things, even if it's a challenging hunt. When I was on the Big Island there, it wasn't hard. We were out for a day. I mean, literally a day walking around. We were maybe at most 5 miles from our vehicle, at most. And even then, it was hot and we were carrying our bags and we had to break the animal down and carry it back. And it wasn't difficult, but it was challenging enough that it begins to make you feel alive in a way that we are just not challenged at all. I mean, usually if it's a challenge, it's up in your mind and it's something that you create for yourself, not something you're actually pitted against. And I think men need to have some sort of a like an enemy, maybe,
Yeah.
something to confront and fight against in a way.
Yeah. I would agree. Um, yeah, I don't know what that enemy could be for me. I can only speak for myself. I kind of create that on my own, you know.
Hmm.
We can all be our own worst enemy and not in a healthy way either, but you can also do it in a healthy way. You can be that person who can get in your own head and be like, you know what, you need to get it today, like you're being a sissy, and you don't want, like you don't want to be this sissy. And the more you do it, the more you give into it, the easier it is to become just weak.
Sure.
So yeah, it'd be cool to sit down and kind of brainstorm what some ideas could be to create that enemy that we almost need, right? You almost need that someone there pushing you. Um, because yeah, we're a weird species, There's two different people out there. There's the as you could simply put, like the wolf and the sheep, right?
Hmm.
And I was having this conversation with our mutual friend of ours, but I was saying, especially in today's society, there's definitely people out there that need to be led. And that's just is what it is. It's sometimes this is the easiest thing. I'm not sure it's the most healthy thing for our mental state, but sometimes having a job and having someone in charge who knows all the answers and all you got to do is the labor, that's like the best and easiest thing. It's nice to be that person sometimes that's just digging the ditch and someone else is going ahead with the plan, showing you where, painting out lines on where to dig it and how deep. So I was saying we almost need more sheep herders because some people are just sheep and just want to be sheep. And there can't just be wolves and sheep. There also has to be sheep herders. But I don't know. I haven't thought too much into that to where definitely I feel like the wolf mentality, because you're just running with other wolves, is pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Because you got the lead wolf, and then there's only a small pack that runs with them. So
I think we've evolved to be super hyper efficient, which means that we'll look for the path of least resistance when we're presented with two paths. It's like being out in the wilderness and you come across a game trail. Why do all the animals follow the same trail? I mean, they can go an infinite number of directions, and yet all of the animals funnel into one trail. Why?
yeah,
They're following, they're choosing the path of least resistance. That trail has already been beaten down and stamped down and freed of debris and rubble and rocks. And that's what we do, is we just look for that path of least resistance. And it's no wonder to me that we can't find any fulfillment, because there's nothing that's challenging to bump up against and actually make ourselves stronger.
yeah, totally. I just, when you're talking about that, I just think about the old days of finding new worlds, like the guys that were out there, even though you would say that when Lewis and Clark came across, or whoever's discovering the West, it was already discovered, right, by Native Americans. So they were kind of forging their own path. But that's a crazy thing, I just, there is something in the human nature that has that sense of adventure
Mm-hmm.
that even us, right? Like, how many times have you been on a trail and look at little kids, like go back to looking at little kids?
Yeah.
You walk on a trail and all they want to do is jump off it. That's all they want
Yeah.
to do. They
Right.
just want to take this, they just want to get off that trail. It's funny. Um, so yeah, but we do become more and more just want to be on the trail and what's comfortable, because we don't know what's off of the trail. I
With
wonder if it's just that uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what could be, right? The potential of what could be on the other side of that trail or just over that hill. Like, I'm a very
Yeah,
curious person. So I want to know. I don't want somebody to tell me. I mean, you could tell me what's over there, but I got to see it for myself. Like, I want to go
totally.
over and check it out for myself. with all of
Yeah.
the different things that I've seen you do that, people who follow you on Instagram or know you to some degree would see with hunting and your underwater stuff, just everything that you do. Uh, is there, is there a common theme? Is what, if you were to ask what is your purpose? Cause we were talking about that earlier. What would you say your purpose is?
And that's a good question. It's not until I reached my 30s I'd feel like I really started looking at that, because up until that point I was just doing everything that felt right without a thought. There was no thought. It was just like whatever feels good, I'm doing it. If this job comes up, doing it. If I'm in a job that was not feeling right for me, I'd quit and I'd go find something else to do. That's kind of why that sounds bad because I've done so much different work, but I've learned a lot doing a lot of different things. And sometimes it doesn't feel right, whether it's someone I'm working with or whatnot. Once I reach my 30s, I feel like, and I guess having a kid too probably helped a lot with that. You start thinking like, what's your purpose, And the silly things that I do as far as skateboarding and going free diving, you could almost look at those as kind of silly things. Like what's the purpose,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a selfish act, but I've come to the realization that I've pushed other people into doing some things that feel right for themselves, by me posting something of me skateboarding or me free diving. I've had people like, oh man, that inspired me to go out and do something, which is weird because social media is such a weird thing. And I've come to a pretty healthy place with it where I don't take it too serious and I kind of just
Yeah.
do whatever feels right and don't put too much thought into it. But I've had a lot of people reach out and be like, man, I really was inspired by that. And it inspired me to get out and do some stuff. And I have always been that way with other people. I've loved to push them into uncomfortable situations. I've gotten in a lot of people into some very uncomfortable situations, but I love it because it creates fun stories, later on.
For sure.
But I do feel like part of me is that purpose. Yeah. So part of me does have that purpose of just wanting to get other people out of their situation that they're in and just push them into uncomfortable places. And I do love teaching people things that I've learned. I do feel like everybody kind of does need to learn the hard way. Too much, there can be too much coaching involved, at least for the way I learn. So I've learned things the hard way of just learning them without a coach. So I'm more than happy to expedite that process for somebody as quickly as I can. But there's going to
Right.
be a point where you can only explain so much, and then you need to experience it for yourself. Um, so, in a quick answer, my purpose would probably just be a father and raising my child the best I possibly can.
Yeah.
So as soon as I know that I'm past that point, I take that same philosophy and add it to whoever else, close friends, even strangers that I feel like could benefit from what I have. And also just to become like the best, is it as silly as it sounds, like I want to be the best version of myself as far as I'm ready for anything.
Mm.
So if someone calls me tomorrow and is like, hey, we're going on this hunt, I'm ready. Someone calls me and we're going diving all day, I'm ready. We're going to go hike up to the top of this mountain. Okay, let's do it, or even something as crazy as, uh, you know, I've, my daughter's birth was kind of gnarly. So like I learned a lot in that process. Since then, I've helped out with other people's, childbirths. Cause like
Mm-hmm.
I was able to be it and see that process. And I've been with a couple other people and helped them, like they were struggling through their childbirth. And I came in just to be that voice of reason. Our medical system can be very medically inclined and they just want to push certain agendas. And it's like, wait a minute, is the baby healthy? Is the mom healthy? Why are we rushing this natural process? Of course, there's always a time that we need to intervene,
Of
but
course. Right.
a lot of times. So I don't know, random stuff like that. It just comes to me, like I just do what feels right, and I try not to overthink things too much. I feel like I'm pretty good at living in the present, so I'm able to just accept the day for what it is. And if something feels right, if I need to hang out with someone or something, that's my purpose for that day.
Hmm. What is your relationship or your thoughts around the threat of injury or death? Like I tend to be a more calculated person, so I will take that into consideration pretty heavily, and I'll
Yeah.
make decisions with that in mind, especially as a father, right? I've got kids that rely on me, and I've got other things that I want to accomplish. I'm very curious about when I see the things that you do, from the outside looking in, you could say, man, these things are risky. There's a lot of risk associated with it. And so what's your relationship with risk and how that plays into your decision making process?
As far as getting hurt, there's not much consideration for getting hurt. Um, I've always been good at just dealing with pain and having the mindset that I'll heal. From a young age, as crazy as this sounds, I've always felt like if something happened and I became paralyzed or something, I would just deal with it. Like
Mm,
whatever, that would be my life at that point. That's a crazy thought to think. It's weird to say it out loud, but I've had that thought, and it's like I'm sure after it would happen, I would probably regret it. Um, I try not to live with too much regrets, but there's not much consideration for injury. Um, at that point, it just is what it is. Death, on the other hand, like you said, now that we have kids, it's a little different, because there's someone who kind of relies on you now. But I do feel like if I don't do some of these things, I'm not I'm not showing my child how well you can live life and the excitement that there is out there to live life. And
yeah.
as well as, as far as death goes, it's not, here's an easy way. Like when we used to race off road, we would race as fast as we felt we needed to race, because in off-road racing, a lot of it has to do with keeping the truck alive and not breaking
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. Right. Just be in the game, right?
Just be in the game. And a lot of those off-road races, only like 50% of the people that start finish. So there's a
Okay.
lot of just keeping the truck alive. But when we drove conservative, it almost it didn't help.
Hmm.
Like when you're driving at where you think, obviously not over, you can easily overdrive the vehicle, but if you're in race mode, your brain is like tuned in, right? You're way more focused. I feel the same way about life, like if you're tuned in to life and doing these things that actually make you question, like, hey, if I screw this up right now, there's a possibility of death or injury. So the more situations I could put myself in like that, the more sharp my mind becomes, and the more sharp all my senses become. And I can only get to that place by being there. Not, I wouldn't say close to death, because you don't have to be right on the edge of the cliff, hanging off of it to get that feeling. There's other times where you can get that feeling, and it's all perception. Like I was explaining this to somebody. Everybody drives a car, and we drive by other cars going the other direction, 70 miles an hour, that are
Right.
less than 10 feet away. So if you were standing in a nice quiet forest, and all of a sudden, okay, let's say 70 miles an hour one way and 70 miles an hour the other way, that's 140 miles an hour. If you were standing in the forest and a boulder came flying by you at 140 miles an hour, 10 feet away, you would feel like you almost died.
Right. Right.
But since we do it so much and we've gotten away with it so many times driving, it's not even a thing. We
Mm,
got old ladies, little kids. It's perception. So like the more you do some of those things, the more your perception goes away of this isn't actually that dangerous. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wrote down here as you were saying that, just to reframe it the way I heard you say it, is that the because you're playing maybe at greater stakes, it makes you sharper, it makes you perform better. It almost forces you in a way and puts you in a position where you have to perform at your best. Otherwise, you run some very serious risks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of situations that you've been in where you're thinking, hey, you know what, like this could be it, like I'm in a very bad way right now?
Nothing long and drawn out.
Okay.
I've had a few. I've never laid there and like, man, I got to get out of this situation because I'm starving and freezing. I've had a few cold nights, but more just quick motorcycle, almost like, oh my God, I almost hit that tree, hit a rock and like got bounced all sideways. And, you know, it's weird because those are split second things that go by, near death experiences, but you kind of just like brush them off. But there's been other times where I've woken up on the ground, not knowing where I was, and I couldn't feel my legs. One time I remember looking
Really?
down at my feet. I remember looking down at my feet, and I couldn't feel my legs. And I was like, man, this sucks. This is bad. Like, I remember having that feeling, and I remember moving my toes, and I was like, yeah, like they're still there, like I didn't have feeling of it, but I remember being able to move them. And, I rattled my head pretty good, but that could have easily been it for me. But it happened so quick, it wasn't some long drawn out process. So
Sure.
I've had a few shark encounters that in the moment, I don't give into it. I had one just recently, like actually during that, when we shot that Sore Necks film, we
Mm-hmm.
went out to a spot that has lots of sharks, and I was going to get Ricky in the water, and if it was mellow enough, and thankfully he didn't get in the water. And right when I got in, I had this shark harassing me. My thought process in my head while that was happening was, this little weak ass shark, like what if he like bites me, whatever, maybe he takes a finger or something, it's not going to be serious. That's what I was telling myself in my head. Now I got back on the boat. That same shark had bitten one of the fish in half that my cousin had caught on the boat.
Oh, geez.
And we're talking like your whole butt cheek would have been gone, right? And
Right,
then
right.
I've seen them eat these fish in half. Like if I took a fish and tried to rip it in half, I know how strong it is. It's like pure muscle. So I see how quick it happens. That thing could have took my butt cheek off, like, or my leg, whatever, calf,
Right. Or
without even
worse.
a question. And like, boom, that would have been it. I probably would have bled out and died. So it's not till after you like giggle about it, but in the moment, I have a pretty good job. I do a pretty good job at lying to myself.
So do you think that serves you in the moment, or hurts you? Like how
I
does
think it
that thought
serves me.
process play out? Okay, so how does it serve you? Because me,
The
I get
biggest,
to that and I'm like, I'm out. Like I'm getting out of the
yeah,
water. I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. I'm not even
yeah.
getting in the water.
So in that case, I ended up not diving that day, but I went through the experience of dealing with that shark and trying to shoot some other fish, but that they were just too aggressive. So I made the decision to finally get out. Um, when I made that decision, it was only because I had that one shark. It was okay to keep an eye on one shark, and he was kind of like coming in, harassing me, and then he'd swim away and come back in. But another one came into the picture that was probably, I didn't, it was down deeper, but
Okay.
it was probably 8 to 10 feet. And this one was probably 6, 7 feet. When I seen that bigger shark show up, because sharks, they feed off each other, like behavior
Sure.
breeds behavior. So if one's
Right.
aggressive, the other ones think, oh, something else is going on. I knew I couldn't keep my eye on two of them. So I was like, that's it. I'm good. Like, I'm going to get back in the boat. I'm going to cut my losses and get out. But what I was going to say, why it benefits me in certain situations, maybe not that situation, but it gets rid of hesitation for me. And I've seen a lot of mistakes by myself made with hesitation, and then also in the coaching that I do as far as off-road training. If you hesitate, that can be the mistake. That could be it. That could be the difference between success and failure. Because even if you hesitate for that split second, that puts you in the wrong line as far as off-roading, and you're not going to make that climb. Or let's take hunting, for example. If you hesitate for that quick second, you may not get that shot
Yeah,
ever again. And
your
that may
shot
be the
opportunity is
difference.
missed.
Yeah. So I think about that. Like, there's that stat that like, let's just say elk hunting, most of the elk killed are by 10% of the people, but what is it? It's like, no, 10% of the people are successful, and it's only like 1% of the people who hunt actually fill that 10%, or I forget what it is, but
Okay.
basically the people who are actually performing at that high level and able to take those opportunities and turn them into success, I feel like that's because there's no hesitation involved. If you take someone who just started hunting, they may have that hesitation and may have missed that shot. So I just feel, for me, there can't be any hesitation. I probably equate it back to skateboarding as a kid. If you're rolling up to jump off a set of stairs, if you hesitate for a split second, you may jump off kind of weird, and you're going to eat it. You have to be fully committed, and you have to just in your head think that you got it no matter what. It's the same thing with riding up to a big jump, dirt biking. If you're riding up to a jump and you think for a second, I might not make it, and you don't give it the gas that you needed to do, or you tap the brake. I've seen a lot of people crash like that,
Yeah.
and I've done it many times. So I feel like if I just don't hesitate, even if I'm going to crash, whatever, but without that hesitation there, I feel like it benefits me.
I've never really considered this before since you started talking about it, but yeah, it's very interesting because why do we hesitate? Well, we hesitate because we're afraid, right? It's fear. It's fear of something might happen to us, or fear that we might look foolish. I know that's part of the reason I hesitate at times. But in the hesitation, in our natural response to the fear, that's what actually creates the problem. It's
Yep.
counterintuitive. That's what's actually creating the problem. I remember when I very first started hunting, there was a couple of instances, one in Arizona where I stocked up on this nice mule deer, and I didn't really know what to do because I never had any looks. Like, that was one of my first time hunting, and the thing stood up, and I had moments, like replaying it now. I'm like, oh man, I had moments where I could have killed this thing. And he jumped up and ran off, and I tried to shoot him as he ran, and I missed. And like, it was the hesitation that kept me from making that shot. And I thought to myself, well, how would I have done it differently? And really, it's just the repetition of it.
Yeah.
It's just getting in there and doing it over and over and over and over again to realize, okay, this is where I shoot. This is where I draw. This is when I don't hesitate. This is when I maybe take my time. But you have to get those reps in. Otherwise, you'll never put yourself in better positions.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like doing a lot of different things too helps with that, for me at least. Whether it be skateboarding, BMX, dirt biking, shooting bows, it just all those things transfer over to each other. As weird as it sounds, I've benefited bow hunting from my skateboarding. It just is what it is. Like, there just is that there's going to come that time where that stressful moment of you got to make a decision. And in my head, it's helped, have the confidence and be able to shoot. And a good example I've noticed too, we're about to go to Winter Strong with Sornex, and we have a fun competition every year. And I see it's hard shooting around other people. It's
Yes,
fun because
definitely.
it's an added stress, like something you don't normally get. You can shoot at home all day. You could shoot great at home by yourself.
Yeah.
uh and then you get around other people, and it's like there's nerves there's fear, Are they going to make fun of me if I just freaking airball this arrow right now?
Yes, they are. The
Especially,
answer to that is
yeah,
yes.
yes, they are definitely, and then you put it into a competition form to where you have teammates that are looking at you like, hey, can you make this shot?
Right.
And you're winded. And so I feel like the nerves, it, you already have enough things going against you in that situation. The last thing you need is your nerves and fear to be involved. Um, so I feel like I can do a pretty good job at pushing those things out. And I would love to try push other people into that same mindset of you got to be in the mindset that you're not going to miss. Even if you do miss, that is what it is. But your whole mindset when you pull that trigger is I'm not missing and nothing else matters, not what these people think, nothing else matters. So I think just the nerves can get involved with people's heads, and create that hesitation.
I see so many of the things that you do, and I wonder. It seems to me, I'm like, oh, okay, anything that comes to this guy's mind, like he does, and I'm wondering if there's things, adventures, trips, activities that you have on your list that you haven't done yet that you're like, I want to do that. That's my next thing that I'm going to get involved with.
Man, it's kind of endless. Like I got a lot of big ambition to do a lot of different things, but they kind of come at me when one comes, they'll stick, and that's all I want to do at that moment.
Mm.
In the long, I'd love to do some mountaineering. I'd love to get to the top of some mountains. I've gotten to some smaller ones, and I'd love to do some of that. Not super stoked on the cold though.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
I'd love to tap more into that, but rock climbing as well. I've done some bouldering and sport climbing and a little bit of trad climbing. Never led it myself though.
What
That is
trad
something
climbing?
that,
What do you mean? What would that be?
okay, so obviously you know what rock climbing is, right?
Sure, right, right.
Yeah, you're just climbing up cliffs. So there's sport climbing is where there's already these bolts that are bolted into the wall. And all you got to do is you clip your carabiner
Flip
into
into.
it and you clip into your rope. That's it. Trad climbing or traditional style is like where you're actually setting gear. You're having to set cams and nuts into
Got it.
cracks. And as you're climbing, so it's just an added stress of, okay, I'm climbing up this crack and I need to put a piece of gear here to keep me safe because I got my rope, but like, what size am I going to put? And I need to hold on with one hand at this point. Hopefully, your feet are in a good place. You take one hand off, you're putting a piece of gear in, then you clip your gear in,
Hmm.
and then you're safe. At that point, you could probably lean on it if you needed to take a break. But then, as soon as you start climbing above that point, if you fall, you're going to fall with the safety of that piece of gear.
Sure, right.
So you kind of climb as far as you feel comfortable. Usually it's less than about 10 feet. Depends
Yeah,
on the climb. And you put another piece of gear in to keep you safe. Um, I'd love to. It's kind of expensive to get all the gear. I have
I
gone with
bet.
other people with all the gear, but I love diving into that stuff like that. And I don't know, I can do crazy stuff like that, but a lot of times it's just very simple things. I just want to spearfish more here at home and bow hunt more here at home, and I don't need to go to any crazy places to do it. Some of my favorite hunting is just axis deer hunting, which you've
Yeah,
done a little bit here.
yeah.
Um, that's very easier for me than going on a big hunt in Alaska or something. But it's almost just as enjoyable sometimes.
Well, I'm anxious to
Yeah.
see what you do, man. Like I'm inspired by you. I watch what you do. I'm like, I need to do that. I want to do that. I need to get that. Cause again, I tend to be a little bit more risk averse. So seeing guys like yourself do these things motivates me and inspires me to put myself out there a little bit more, try some things that I haven't tried before. And man, I'm anxious. We were gonna try to get together. I think last time I was in Hawaii, and I think we
Yeah.
just had a schedule conflict. But
Yep.
hopefully this year, when I'm going to bring my oldest son out there with me this year, and hopefully we can connect and get on a hunt together. That'd be a lot of fun. Maybe we can
Yeah. That.
try to stab a sheep together or something.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity
I don't
again
know,
like
man.
that. Yeah.
We did
I've
that
chased.
with pigs in Texas. We went, they
Yeah.
call it hog dogging. So we went and did that in Texas. Me and my oldest son did that in Texas several years ago. And that is a crazy, crazy experience.
Okay. So you know what I learned from that? And I wrote this to one of our friends is a couple things here is it was almost disturbing how easy that was. Okay.
Mm,
So you have this knife and it went in no problem,
right.
right? And that
Sure.
thing was dead in 10 seconds. So that's kind of disturbing, but good to know. Like it's like one of those things that it just as disturbing as it is what it is. Hey, I ate that animal. There should be no problem with that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it just like how crazy that thing, you know, like we live our lives like, oh, it's all good, you know, but to think that how quick things could turn for us.
Yeah. It reminds us of our own mortality, doesn't it?
Yep, exactly. But yeah, what a crazy experience. It was, yeah, we'll probably end up sharing that at some point, but I'll have to give some kind of explanation behind it
There'll
just
have to
so
be some
people kind of
context.
grasp it. It's one of those things that it's like a shock and awe. I don't want people to take it the wrong way. I don't
Sure.
need to share that with people, but there is some lessons to be learned there, you know, that people could learn.
Well, I know you've hunted with Steve Ranella, and I think that's a great model with him is that he's doing some things that I think I was going to say a normal person, but that's not the right way to say it. But somebody who isn't like in the world of hunting would ever experience or even ever think about. But he does such a tremendous job at educating and explaining and giving context where people just see the grip and grins on social media. He does a
Yeah,
phenomenal job of diving deep into it and making it engaging and entertaining, but also educational.
absolutely. Yeah, since I was on the show, we've done 3 episodes now. We did 2 more this year. If you want to watch them, they're for free on the meateater.com. Um, and the other ones are on Netflix. I think there's some on YouTube as well, but there's mixed reviews with those guys, you know, like some people love them, some people hate them. And it's sad because most people that want to talk bad about them, especially to me, that because they know that I've been on the show, they've never even really met them or spent time with them.
Mm,
Um, and so it's hard to really grasp how someone feels. But I've spent some time. I went on a youth deer hunt with Steve and his son this year. He invited me out. I was up in Montana. I was supposed to be working that week and I wasn't. He invited me to go on their youth deer hunt and spend some time with him and his son. So we did that. And then after I spent some time with him and his family, you know, just sitting around the dinner table, he's a great human, you know, and an awesome father. So I got nothing but good things to say about that whole crew. I had an absolute blast working with them, and they're good people. And you can't deny how much good that they're doing as far as bringing new eyeballs into our hunting world.
definitely.
Um, yes, maybe not everybody likes their spot being crowded, and it does suck. Trust me, I fight that too. But we will lose hunting as far as politics go if we don't shed a good light on it and if we don't support each other. I've come to that realization. It's easy for me just to like live in my own little bubble and think, you know, everything's peachy and stuff. But as far as politics go, we will lose hunting. I feel like if we don't all support each other and really shed a good light on what it is. And they do a good job at, okay, it's the adventure of going out there and that sense of purpose to be out there hunting. And then when you get something, you're cooking it, you're enjoying it with friends and family. You can't explain that feeling to people. It's something they have to experience for themselves. But I know for me, that is it's a huge sense of accomplishment. If I go get something and then sit down and eat this dinner with friends and family of something that you've gotten, there's no words to explain it, but it just feels right. It just feels like if you're just going off what feels right, that feels right.
Yeah. My oldest son and I were able to, fortunately, we drew out for a moose tag here in Maine, and so we were able to shoot a moose this year. And I can't tell you, I mean, we've shot other animals. We've both been successful to some degree, but man, just something about it, sitting around the table, eating a moose roast that we went out and we spent time, we hunted, we broke down, we got back to camp, we cooked ourselves. It's an amazing, amazing process. And the food always just tastes a little bit better when you do it that way.
Oh yeah, it's the best, and there's an appreciation for it.
Of
It's just
course.
like it's
Right.
just way different than getting something at the grocery store. It's
Yeah.
the same as someone growing their own garden too, right? Like if someone shares some vegetables with you that they've grown in their own garden, there's a sense of pride there. Um, so I just love it. It's just something with food. I mean, obviously, it's something that keeps us alive. We all need to eat. So there must be something primal in us that just has that reward system for getting it. But yeah, back to what we were saying earlier, like our society, it's gotten too easy. It's too easy to go to the store. I mean, you could really, like if you wanted to live off McDonald's, you could live off McDonald's and you could literally spend 3, $4 a day doing that. It
Yeah.
costs a lot more for us to go hunting. I can tell you
Well, you
that.
might not live that long either. I mean, like you
No.
might shorten your years if you were to do that.
Oh, absolutely. But I do feel like the human body's pretty adaptable where you get some good years out of
That's
there, but
true. True.
yeah, it's crazy. What a crazy world we live in, but I love it and I love trying to adapt to it.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing, man. I love that you're blazing and you're making new paths and you're introducing people to new things. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about today because I want these guys to hear what you're doing and hopefully be motivated and inspired to get some of this primal way of living to whatever degree they can back into their own life. So I want to tell you, I'm inspired by you and I appreciate you joining me on the podcast, man.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Same for me. I look at a lot of people and what they're doing, and it inspires me. And that's uh, social media gets a bad rap, but
Yeah,
people are taking it. You can choose who you follow. If follow some different people or something. If you feel like there's some hate involved or something, or you're just not into it, but there is a special thing that's there, and I love finding inspiration in that and actually putting it to use. That's the key, is not just letting it be empty inspiration to where you're sitting on your couch. Wow, that's cool that guy's doing that. And you get this little sense of, I'd love to do that. And then you scroll to the next thing. And then
right,
you're
right.
like, oh man, you're all off to something else. So as long as it's not like empty inspiration and you're actually like, I'm going to get out and do that, I love it for that purpose.
Well, tell the guys where to connect with you, how to find you, and stay in touch, especially as you start to do some of these adventures you're talking about. I'm sure a lot of guys would love to
Yeah.
hear about that as they come online.
Yeah. So mainly just on Instagram, which is at Danny Bolton. So DannyBolton. And it shows up as Boreman as well on there. Boreman is a nickname that was given to me, and we kind of just have fun with it, but it's turned into like that wild side that.
Yeah, man.
So I started a brand called Boreman now. So we have a website. It's Boreman Official. I think Boreman. I don't know what boreman.com was, but we had to do Boreman Official for the website. And we also have an Instagram Boreman Official that will have some of the products and stuff. And I want that to be more than just me. There's a lot of other people who live this lifestyle, and a lot other people who do it way better than I do. And I would love for other people to tap into that wild side with them as well. So the brand is just going to be um, there will be some training. I'm gonna probably eventually start a podcast and a YouTube and all that stuff, and just get into making content. And I want to share what I've learned and share that with the world, so people can go on there and like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And you'll be able to find a place to learn from someone who doesn't try to overcomplicate things too much.
Sure. Right.
So that's where you can find me. But yeah, by far the easiest is just going to be on my Instagram, and then you can just ask me. I try to be pretty available for people if they want to ask questions or something, especially if they're interested in doing something fun. I had someone asking me some questions about forging knives yesterday, and you know that we have some incredible friends that are the best in the world at forging knives.
No doubt.
So I can push them off to them. I'm not as good as them, but I understand the basics, like I can get someone through the basics enough to get them started. And then from there, they need to go find someone who's an absolute professional in that situation. If they're trying to find out how to temper a knife, or, what temperature to do things, or what different steel. But I try to be available for people. But don't ask me stupid questions.
That's
On
a fair
there.
request.
Yeah. No, I'm just
Well, right
kidding. I
on,
don't
brother.
care. Yeah.
We'll sync it all up for the guys, let them know where to go. And once again, I appreciate you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you in about a month at Winter Strong.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I love everything you're doing. So keep going.
Thanks, brother.